My stepmother threw out my memories of my late mother and said, "It's just junk. Get over it." My dad did nothing. For years, I plotted in silence. The day I graduated from college, when they expected a thank you on stage, I took the microphone and announced, "Have you ever felt the gut-wrenching pain of losing someone for a second time?" That's exactly what hit me when I found the cardboard box in the garage trash. My mom's photos torn to shreds, and the cards she'd written me before she died soaked through with coffee grounds. Through a blur of tears, I could just make out my stepmother, Denise, watching from the doorway, a dish towel in her hand. "It was just old clutter collecting dust, Julia. It's high time you moved on." It was in that moment, at 16 years old, that I decided to nurture this memory, to keep it burning inside me like a pilot light, waiting for the right moment to finally show everyone who Denise really was. I woke up on my 16th birthday with a crushing weight on my chest, a pressure that seemed to pin my whole body to the mattress. It marked 1 year to the day since Mom had been taken by a cancer that ravaged her body in mere months, but had never once touched her smile. For the first time in 16 years, I would have to face my birthday without the red velvet cake with cream cheese frosting she always baked from scratch. I rolled over, my eyes fixing on the photo on my nightstand, the one from our trip to the Outer Banks, the salty wind whipping through our identical brown hair. "Morning, Mom," I whispered, just as I did every morning. It was a silly little ritual, maybe, but it was my way of keeping her close. I took a deep breath, fighting back the tears I knew were coming. Denise, my stepmother of only 6 months, had no patience for what she called all the unnecessary drama. Steeling myself to pretend everything was fine, a skill I'd honed since the funeral, I headed downstairs. In the kitchen, Denise was arranging a store-bought cake on the counter, one from that fancy bakery at the Ridgedale Galleria. My dad was already at the table, eyes glued to his phone as usual, likely tackling work emails before his first cup of coffee. Did he even remember that today also marked a year without her? Or was it just another birthday, another excuse to buy an expensive gift to make up for his absence? "Happy birthday, Julia." Denise's embrace was suffocating, her sharp perfume giving me an instant headache. I tried not to recoil as she pressed me against her thin, angular frame, a body not built for comforting hugs. Finally looking up from his phone, my dad handed me a box containing the newest iPhone, a gift clearly picked out by her. "So you can capture all your new happy moments," he said with that familiar, tired smile. School was a complete blur. Even the birthday wishes from my friends felt hollow. I came home early, desperate to be alone, but also searching for something specific. I knew Mom had kept a special box of my birthday decorations: silver glitter stars, rainbow ribbons, and the hand-stitched fabric banner that read, "Happy Birthday, Jules." Finding it, I thought, might make me feel like she was still with me somehow. It was in the garage that my world shattered for the second time. There, next to the overflowing recycling bins, I saw a corner of a familiar blue cardboard box, the one where I kept all of our photos and the letters Mom had written me from the hospital. My heart stopped. I pulled out what was left: ripped photographs, soaked letters, torn pages from her journal, the memories I cherished most, discarded like garbage. Who could do something so monstrous? Deep down, I already knew. I was kneeling on the cold concrete floor, trying to piece together a photo from my 10th birthday, the last party before Mom's diagnosis, when I heard the distinct click of Denise's heels. I looked up to see her slender figure in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me with an expression that never quite reached her eyes. "What are you doing with that?" "Someone threw my things away," I managed to say, my voice trembling as I clutched a shredded letter, my mom's elegant cursive still visible. Denise took 2 steps closer, her tone colder than I had ever heard it. "It was just old junk collecting dust, Julia. It's past time you moved on. It's not healthy to cling to the past like this." The woman who smiled so sweetly at my father was gone. In that instant, something inside me shifted, as if a switch had been flipped. I swallowed the lump in my throat and pushed myself to my feet, still holding a piece of a photograph. "Of course, I get it," I said, forcing a smile as I discreetly slipped a fragment of a letter into my pocket. Denise seemed satisfied with my quick surrender. She had no idea she had just created her own worst enemy, because what would you do if someone tried to throw away not just things, but the very memory of the person you loved most? The second I got upstairs without Denise noticing my shaking hands, I locked myself in the bathroom, I turned the shower on full blast to drown out any noise and collapsed onto the fuzzy bath mat Mom had picked out, the one with a seashell pattern we bought together on a trip to Sanibel Island. Finally, the tears came, hot and furious, mingling with the rage that was building inside me. Carefully, I pulled the salvaged scraps from my pocket. The ink was smeared from the moisture, but I could still make out her words. My dearest Julia, when you read this, I'll be watching over you from somewhere beautiful. Never doubt for a second that you were the greatest gift of my life. I grabbed my hairdryer, and on the lowest setting, aimed it at the soggy fragments, praying no one would hear. It felt like I'd lost my mom all over again. First to cancer, and now to Denise's cold-hearted cruelty. Leaning against the sink, I stared at my reflection. My mother's green eyes, now bloodshot from crying, stared back. "She won't erase you, Mom," I whispered, carefully tucking the semi-dry pieces inside my calculus textbook. What Denise didn't understand is that some bonds are too strong to ever be thrown away. "She did what?" Chloe's voice was a half-shriek in the crowded school cafeteria the next day, her brown eyes wide behind her colorful glasses. I quickly placed a hand on her arm, urging her to keep it down. My best friend since kindergarten had a heart of gold, but subtlety was not her strong suit. Her freckled face flushed with anger as I recounted the story of the trash, the photos, the letters. "That's not just cruel, Jules. That's some straight-up evil stepmother stuff. Seriously, you have to tell your dad." She chewed on the straw of her iced tea, her eyes flashing with indignation. The chaotic noise of the Northwood High School cafeteria buzzed around us, completely oblivious to my own personal apocalypse. I just shook my head, listlessly pushing around the fruit in my yogurt cup. It won't matter. He'll believe her. He always does. In his mind, she's the only thing holding this family together. Chloe adjusted her glasses, a telltale sign that an idea was brewing. A familiar spark of determination lit up her eyes, the same energy she had when we masterminded our plan to sneak into that music festival last year. "So, we go digital. My dad has a professional grade scanner at his accounting firm. They can throw away paper, Julia, but they can't delete digital files they don't even know exist." For the first time all day, a fragile flicker of hope ignited within me. Could we really save what was left before Denise erased it all? My dad got home late that night, same as always. From my room, I heard the familiar rumble of his car in the driveway, the click of the front door, his weary footsteps on the stairs. I tensed when they stopped right outside my door. 2 soft knocks. "Jules, can I come in?" I quickly slid the calculus book containing the letter fragments under my bed and opened a random notebook. "Sure, Dad." He came in and sat on the edge of my bed, his tie still loosened around his neck, smelling of his law firm, a mix of strong coffee and paper files. He looked older than his 42 years, with deep-set dark circles under his eyes and more gray in his hair than I remembered. "Denise told me about the old things she organized today. Are you upset?" His voice was laced with that cautious tone he always used when Mom was the topic. The words were right there on the tip of my tongue. To tell him she hadn't organized anything, she had strategically destroyed pieces of my soul. I wanted to scream that his new wife was systematically wiping every trace of my mother from our lives. But then I saw the sheer exhaustion in his eyes, the way his shoulders slumped in defeat after another grueling day. "No, Dad, I get it. We have to move on." The lie tasted like ash in my mouth, but he smiled, relieved, exactly as Denise must have known he would. And in that moment, I understood. This was going to be a long game, and I would have to be smarter than her. Much smarter. Over the next few weekends, Chloe and I locked ourselves in her bedroom, digitizing every scrap I'd managed to rescue. Her dad's professional scanner captured every detail, even the water-smeared ink. We created a password-protected folder named The Memory Project, with backups saved to 3 different cloud services. In the meantime, I began my own investigation into Denise. Her obsession with social media made it almost too easy. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Denise's digital footprint was everywhere, always paired with a perfect smile and nauseatingly inspirational captions. "Building new beginnings with my chosen family," or "Sometimes you have to lose something to make space for a bigger blessing." Each post made my stomach turn, especially when she used hashtags like new family and bonus mom life. One afternoon, when Denise was out for her weekly manicure at a salon downtown, I seized the opportunity to look at her laptop, which she'd left on the living room coffee table. The password? Pathetically simple. Love 2019, the year she and my dad officially started dating after a respectful period of mourning. That's when I found them. Old photo albums from my dad's law firm events. And there she was, 3 years earlier, long before my mom ever got sick. But it was more than that. In one photo, Denise was in the background, looking at my parents, who were laughing together. The expression on her face, a chilling mix of envy and calculation, sent a shiver down my spine. The whole story about their chance meeting a year after Mom's death was beginning to unravel. The Sparrow Cafe, a cozy spot near the old courthouse square, had become my sanctuary on days when I just needed to think. With its vintage wrought iron tables and the constant comforting smell of cinnamon rolls, it was one of the few places that reminded me of happy times with Mom. We were sitting right at this very spot when she told me about her diagnosis, trying to be brave for me as my world fell apart. Maybe that's why I kept coming back, as if a part of her was still here. It was on one of those afternoons that I saw Aunt Carol walk in, my mom's best friend and my godmother, whom I hadn't seen since the funeral. Her kind brown eyes widened in recognition and emotion. "Julia? Oh my goodness, look at you. You're the spitting image of Claudia." Her hug was tight, smelling of nostalgia and the same Clinique Happy perfume her mom used to wear. For a split second, I closed my eyes and pretended it was her. "Why did you stop coming around, Aunt Carol?" I asked bluntly after she sat down with her cappuccino. She fidgeted with the sugar packets on the table, her gaze dropping. "Your stepmother. She called me a few days after the service. She said my visits were making it harder for you to move on, that it was better to give you all space to adjust to the new situation." A hot, acidic rage burned in my chest. How many other people had Denise pushed away? How many other bridges to my mother had she systematically burned, like a surgeon excising every last trace of a tumor? My 17th birthday party was a production worthy of a reality TV show. Denise hired the most expensive catering company from downtown, a decorator, a DJ, all of it designed to showcase what an amazing, blended family we were. The house was unrecognizable, filled with over-the-top floral arrangements Mom would have hated, and pastel balloons that were definitely not my style. The guest list? A sea of her relatives, a few classmates I barely knew, and my dad's business partners. "Where are Aunt Helen and Uncle Carlos?" I asked my dad quietly, as he straightened his tie in the mirror. My mom's brother and his wife had been at every single one of my birthdays. My dad cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. Denise thought it would be better to keep it smaller, more intimate this year. You know how your aunt gets emotional around these dates?" I nodded as if I understood, mentally adding another entry to my file on Denise. 0 family members from my mom's side were present. 0 connections to my past. During the happy birthday song, under lighting strategically placed for Instagram, Denise gave a teary-eyed speech, champagne flute in hand. "It has been a challenging but incredibly rewarding journey, helping a young woman navigate her grief and rebuild her life," she said, her voice perfectly modulated, as if she'd rehearsed it. "I thank God every day for allowing me to be a safe harbor for the 2 most important people in my life." I forced a smile and murmured my thanks as she wrapped an arm around me for the photos, which I knew would be plastered across her social media within minutes. If she had any idea what was going on in my head, she'd have seen that every fake smile, every polite nod, was just another piece of evidence being cataloged in the file I was building against her. Time warps in strange ways when you're living a double life. A full year had passed since I'd caught Denise discarding my memories, and now, at 18, I had become an absolute master of the hollow hug and the counterfeit smile. My memory project had morphed into something far more complex. Chloe, who was now acing her freshman year in the state university's Comp Sci program, had helped me build a triple redundancy backup system, one copy on a secure cloud server, another on an external hard drive hidden at her house, and a final one on a tiny flash drive I kept tucked inside my old teddy bear, Barnaby, buried deep in my closet. The real Denise. That's what we called the main file now. It contained subfolders meticulously organized by date and category, gaslighting, manipulations, daily cruelties, and the newest, most damning addition, the money trail. Does that sound extreme? It might, if you haven't had to watch your own father become a puppet on a string, or if you've never had your most precious memories treated like trash. You'd probably think I was paranoid, right up until you saw the chronological documentation of hundreds of cruelties, both large and small. I taught myself to covertly record conversations on my phone. I ordered a spy pen off Amazon, delivered to Chloe's house, of course. I documented every time Denise accidentally knocked over a picture of my mom, every subtly vicious comment about how I looked, so much like someone who's gone, and I screenshotted every blocked call from my mother's side of the family. You know, with these intel skills, you could probably get a job with the FBI, Chloe joked one night as we were organizing the latest uploads. I laughed, but it wasn't really funny. No one should have to become a spy in their own home. It was a complete fluke that led me to my dad's office that Thursday afternoon. He'd forgotten some files for a major court hearing and called in a panic, asking me to bring them to his building on Park Avenue. The law firm, Rodriguez and Associates, took up 2 impressive floors of a high-rise with a sweeping view of the city. Maria, the secretary who had been with him for over a decade, greeted me with her usual warm hug. "Sweetheart, you look more like your mother every day," she'd always say, slipping me a piece of chocolate just like she did when I was a little girl. "Your dad's in a quick meeting. You can wait in his office," she said, leading me down the hall. I sat in his huge leather chair, spinning around just like I used to when I was a kid visiting him at work. That's when I saw it. A desk drawer left slightly ajar. Curiosity has always been my greatest weakness, or maybe my greatest strength. A yellow manila folder with my name on it caught my eye. Glancing at the closed door, I hesitated for only a second before pulling it out. Inside were documents for my mother's life insurance policy, a staggering sum with a lot of zeros, specifically designated for my college education and future. It was money I never even knew existed. Further papers revealed a series of regular transfers from that trust account into another, labeled simply household expenses. And there, on the corner of one of the bank statements, was Denise's elegant signature, authorizing the transfer as having power of attorney. My heart hammered against my ribs so loudly I was sure Maria could hear it down the hall as I quickly photographed every single page with my phone. I shoved the folder back exactly as I'd found it just as I heard voices approaching. Was it possible that on top of erasing my mother's memory, Denise was also stealing my future? The week-long leadership camp in the Poconos was a blessing. 7 days away from Denise's suffocating presence. 7 nights spent talking with Chloe about our post-high school plans and updating our files with the new financial evidence. When the school bus dropped me off that Friday afternoon, I noticed something was off right away. The curtains in my bedroom window were different. I furrowed my brow, hoisting my heavy duffel bag up the porch steps, with a growing sense of dread. "Surprise!" Denise's cheerful voice rang out the moment I pushed open my bedroom door. I froze in the doorway, completely stunned. My entire room had been transformed. The navy blue walls were now a bland pastel beige. The dark wood furniture I'd had since I was a kid was gone, replaced by minimalist white pieces that looked like they belonged in a sterile furniture catalog. My band posters, my photos, my life, all of it was gone. Even the quilt my grandma had handmade for my 15th birthday was missing from my bed. "Where is my stuff?" I asked, my voice higher than I intended, as I pulled open drawers to find folded clothes I didn't even recognize. "Oh, I donated all the old, outdated things. The rest is packed up in boxes in the attic for you to sort through," Denise explained with that practiced smile, adjusting a vase of fake flowers on the new desk. "It was a surprise, to help you transition into adulthood, to reinvent yourself. Your father and I thought you deserved a more grown-up, more current space." I thanked her. I hugged her. I feigned delight. But later that night, alone in a room that no longer felt like mine, I scrambled to the back of my closet. Thankfully, old Barnaby the bear was still there, the flash drive safe inside, dismissed as a worthless childhood toy. As I added this latest surprise to our growing archive, a new, more terrifying thought crystallized in my mind. Denise wasn't just trying to erase my mother anymore. She was trying to erase me, too. The next few months were a frantic race against the clock. While Denise was busy launching her new pet project, a blog about modern motherhood and blended families, where she painted herself as a saintly role model, I threw myself completely into my college applications and studying for the SATs. I spent hours at the local public library, far from her watchful eyes, studying like my life depended on it. In a way, it did. This was my escape route. "Pre-med? Are you sure, honey?" It's such a demanding and stressful path. You've already been through so much, Denise commented one night at dinner, scooping salad onto my dad's plate. I always thought communications or marketing would be a better fit. You're so good with people. She smiled, but her eyes were cold and calculating. My father, as usual, just chewed his food, completely oblivious. Did he not see her constant attempts to steer me away from the dream my mother and I had shared? Every night before I slept, I'd reread the last letter from my mom I had managed to save. In it, she'd written, "If you follow your dream of becoming a doctor, I know you will heal not just bodies, but spirits, just like you always did for mine." Studying became my act of rebellion, my secret way of staying connected to her. Every textbook page I turned, every practice test I completed, was me whispering back to her, "I haven't forgotten, Mom. I won't let her tear us apart." On the nights that felt unbearable, I would picture her face on my graduation day, a day that now served a dual purpose in my master plan. "You need to see this now." Chloe was out of breath when she skidded into our usual booth at the diner near her SAT prep class, slamming her laptop onto the table so hard my iced coffee nearly sloshed over the rim. Her face was flushed, and she was pushing her glasses up her nose repeatedly, a sure sign she'd unearthed something big. "Remember you asked me to dig into Denise's professional history? Well, I got into your dad's firm's archived employee files. On the screen was an HR email from 6 years ago. Dear Ms. Vasconcelos, as per the request of Robert Rodriguez Escorno, your departmental transfer to the senior litigation team has been approved. The date on the email was exactly 2 weeks after my mother's initial diagnosis. My stomach lurched. Another document showed a formal request from Denise to work more directly with Mr. Rodriguez's team on urgent cases during his period of family medical leave. She planned it all, Jules, Chloe whispered, her fingers flying across the trackpad to pull up more emails, photos from old office parties where Denise was always strategically positioned near my father. She made her move the second your mom got sick. This wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't fate, and it sure as hell wasn't some chance meeting, a year later like she tells everyone. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the evidence. The most disturbing find was a message chain where Denise was asking a colleague for specific details about my mother's chemotherapy schedule, supposedly to help manage the office workflow. It was framed as professional courtesy, but now, knowing the truth of who she was, it felt like something far more predatory. The day college acceptance letters came out, our living room transformed into a silent war zone. I sat at the computer at exactly 10 a.m., with Denise hovering behind me like a vulture, and my dad peering anxiously over his newspaper. I typed in my application ID, took a deep breath, and clicked. There it was, in clear, bold letters. Congratulations. The admissions committee is pleased to offer you a place in the pre-med program at Johns Hopkins University. "Oh my God, you did it!" my dad yelled, throwing his paper aside and pulling me into a hug, with a raw excitement I hadn't seen in him for years. His eyes were shining with unshed tears. For a fleeting moment, I saw the father he used to be, the one from before Mom was gone. Denise swooped in, a wide smile plastered on her face that never reached her eyes. "I'm so proud, sweetheart. I told you we could get you there, didn't I, Robert?" And just like that, she was rewriting history, absorbing my victory into her own narrative as she pulled out her phone to capture the perfect family moment. The celebration party was naturally her idea. Our house filled with friends I barely recognized, mostly my dad's colleagues and Denise's social circle. At the peak of the evening, she raised a glass for a toast. As a stepmother, I embraced the challenge of filling an immense void in this family's life. I smiled on autopilot, discreetly filming her performance on my phone, documenting every carefully chosen word. From across the room, I could see the discomfort on the faces of a few of the older guests, the ones who had actually known my mother. They knew, just as I did, that no one could ever fill that void, especially not someone who worked so diligently to make it deeper. "Julia, can we talk?" My dad rarely came into my room since Denise's forced redesign. He looked out of place there, too large for the delicate chair she'd picked out, visibly uncomfortable amidst the pastel colors and fake flowers I secretly loathed. It was a Sunday afternoon, and with Denise at the mall with her friends, we had a rare moment alone in the house, reminiscent of those first few months after we lost Mom. "I've noticed you never talk about your mother," he began, fiddling with the watch on his wrist, her last anniversary gift to him. The counselor from the company's EAP mentioned that holding everything in like that might not be healthy. His words sounded rehearsed, as if this speech had been practiced. I looked up from the Gray's Anatomy textbook I was studying, trying to discern if this was genuine concern or another idea planted by Denise. "What is it you want me to say, Dad? That I miss her every single second? That I still talk to her picture before I go to sleep?" The bitterness in my voice was sharper than I intended. He looked genuinely taken aback, as though he hadn't anticipated my reaction. "It's just, sometimes it feels like you've completely moved on, as if..." I didn't let him finish. "As if she never existed? Isn't that what all of you wanted?" The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating, finally broken by the sound of the front door opening. Denise was home early. My dad almost looked relieved by the interruption. The conversation was never finished. Johns Hopkins Hospital was an intimidating labyrinth during my first few weeks of shadowing. I got lost twice on my way to the oncology department, where I was observing consultations as part of a special program for promising freshmen. While consulting a map on my phone, I turned a corner and bumped squarely into a doctor with an impeccable white coat and silvering hair. "Excuse me, doctor, I stopped short when his eyes widened in recognition. "Julia? Julia Rodriguez?" He gently gripped my shoulders, his face breaking into a warm smile. "My God, you are the spitting image of Claudia." Dr. Alex Bennett had been in med school with my parents. He used to come over for weekend barbecues back when our life was normal. After Mom died, like so many others, he had simply vanished. "Look at you. And in the pre-med program, your mother would be over the moon." We grabbed coffee in the hospital cafeteria after his shift. Dr. Bennett spoke about my mom with an ease that no one at home ever did, as if she wasn't a forbidden topic. Then, he hesitantly asked about Denise. Something in my expression must have given me away. "I never liked her, you know. Even back then." He trailed off, as if he'd said too much. "Back then?" I pressed. He sighed, looking around before lowering his voice. "Denise had always been fixated on my father, even when my mother was alive and well. Everyone at the firm saw it, the way she'd watch him, how she'd manufacture reasons to be alone with him. Your mother knew too." The long Memorial Day weekend provided the perfect excuse for Denise to suggest a family getaway to the Outer Banks. Not just to any beach, but to the small, secluded town where my mother's family beach house stood. A simple, classic blue-shuttered cottage with a porch overlooking the Atlantic. It was the one place on Earth that was still completely and totally Mom's. And now, Denise was coming for it. I hadn't set foot in that house since before she got sick, and a sharp pang hit my chest, seeing that it was exactly as I remembered. It seemed this was one piece of the past that not even Denise had managed to renovate. Yet, "This place has so much potential," she remarked on the second morning, sipping her coffee on the porch, her eyes scanning the ocean view with a developer's cold calculation. "With a proper renovation, the value would skyrocket." "Have you seen the new luxury condos they're building just down the coast?" I just kept swinging in the hammock my grandfather had hung decades ago, feigning indifference. "You should really consider selling when you turn 21, Julia. That money would be far more useful for your future than an old house you barely visit." That night, long after my dad and Denise had gone to bed, I slipped out for a walk on the beach. The full moon lit up the sand, just like in the bedtime stories my mom used to tell me. It was on my way back that I saw it, planted on the adjacent property, a discreet, professionally printed sign. "Future home of the Seagate Reserve. Luxury waterfront living. Coming soon." A quick search on my phone confirmed what my gut already knew. A massive real estate project was buying up the entire coastline. Our little blue-shuttered cottage was sitting right in the middle of what their website called a private seaside paradise. Denise's sudden interest in the property now made perfect, sickening sense. This was never about my future. It was about the fortune that land would soon be worth. The perfect opportunity presented itself when Denise flew to Austin for 3 days, scheduled to be a keynote speaker at some modern motherhood influencer summit. The moment the Uber carrying her to the airport cleared the driveway, I was already searching the parts of the house that were usually her exclusive territory, starting with her walk-in closet. I found nothing in the perfectly organized wardrobes, nothing in the drawers aligned with military precision. I was about to give up when I noticed a slight bulge in the decorative lining on the top shelf of the closet. Standing on a chair, I reached up and felt something hard hidden behind the fabric. It was a small, old-fashioned brass key. Instinctively, I knew this was important. But what did it open? I spent the afternoon quietly trying it on every antique drawer and cabinet in the house, with no luck. Then it hit me. The attic. The one space under the roof that Denise had declared full of black mold and structurally unsafe, forbidding anyone from ever going up there. The pull-down ladder groaned in protest as I lowered it from the ceiling hatch. The attic was dusty and dim, but it wasn't dangerous or moldy. In fact, it was surprisingly organized, with boxes neatly labeled. Robert's documents, Vasconcelos family photos, donation pile, and there, tucked into the farthest corner, was a dark wooden chest I had never seen before. My heart pounded as the small brass key slid perfectly into the lock. Inside, I found them. Dozens of letters in my mother's unmistakable handwriting, all still sealed in their envelopes, and a small, red leather-bound notebook, her diary from her final months. I spent the entire night locked in my room, reading by the dim light of my bedside lamp. The letters were addressed to so many people: aunts, uncles, old friends, even my future medical school professors. Mom had never doubted that was the path I would choose. Many had specific instructions written on the front, to be given to Julia on her 18th birthday, for Robert to read on our 10th anniversary apart, for my parents on Christmas. All of them were dated from her last days in the hospital, when she still had the strength to write, and not a single one had ever been delivered. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Denise had intercepted them. She had deliberately hidden them away, silencing my mother's final words. But why? The diary held the answer. In it, Mom had chronicled her most private thoughts during her treatment. Dee continues to appear in my hospital room with flimsier and flimsier excuses. One entry read, Robert thinks she's just being helpful, but there's a look she gets when she watches him, when she thinks no one else can see. It's like a predator watching its prey. With trembling hands, I read on. Today, Dee offered to administer my IV meds when the nurse was busy. I refused. Something doesn't feel right, but I'm too tired to explain this unease to Robert. He has enough to worry about. And then, the entry that made the blood in my veins run cold. Dee casually mentioned that she would take over Julia's care when I'm gone, as if it were a foregone conclusion. Not like a friend offering help, but like someone claiming a prize, as if it's already been decided, as if she's just waiting. The very last entry, the handwriting shaky and faint. If anything happens, faster than they expect, someone needs to look into. I didn't sleep a wink that night. How could I? At 5 a.m., I sent out an urgent text to Chloe and Dr. Bennett, setting up a meeting. We gathered at a quiet coffee shop across town, far from any familiar eyes or ears, and I laid the letters and the diary on the table between us. Dr. Bennett's face grew pale as he read the passages about Denise, his surgeon's hands trembling almost imperceptibly as he turned the pages. I knew something was wrong. Her symptoms, they declined so rapidly at the end. Do you think she could have interfered with the treatment? Chloe asked in a hushed voice, nervously adjusting her glasses. Dr. Bennett shook his head, looking troubled. We can't prove malpractice without a smoking gun, but Claudia's own suspicions, combined with Denise's subsequent behavior, this establishes a deeply disturbing pattern. He looked directly at me, his eyes full of a sad understanding. What do you want to do with this, Julia? The answer was immediate, as if it had been waiting inside me for years. The graduation. It's in 6 months. Everyone will be there. Family, friends, my dad's colleagues. Denise loves an audience, right? Let's give her the biggest one of her life. As we started to outline the plan, a strange sense of calm settled over me. This was no longer just about revenge. This was about justice. It was about giving my mother a voice after Denise had tried so hard to silence her forever. She wanted to erase my mother from the story, I said, clutching the diary to my chest. But I'm going to make sure the whole world hears her voice loud and clear. I was thinking a theme of sable and gold for your graduation party. It's so sophisticated, and it matches the Johns Hopkins colors perfectly. Denise was flipping through party planning magazines while I was trying to cram for my final anatomy exam. The ceremony was only 2 months away, and she had seized complete control of all the arrangements, effectively turning my college graduation into her personal public relations campaign. I've already reserved the grand ballroom at the Belvedere and ordered the custom-engraved invitations. Oh, and I hired a photographer who shoots for Town and Country, she chirped. I mumbled my thanks without looking up from my textbook, silently counting to 10. Ever since I found the letters, Every single interaction with Denise had become a carefully calculated performance. The more excited she got about her perfect party, the more flawless our plan became. She was, without a clue, building the very stage for her own spectacular downfall. Besides us, of course. Who do you want at the head table? I was thinking the Hendersons. They have wonderful connections at the medical center, and what about Mom's parents? And Uncle Carlos? I asked, keeping my tone casual as I turned a page. Denise froze for a fraction of a second, her practiced smile faltering before it snapped back into place. Oh, honey, they're getting on in years. Such a long event would be exhausting for them. We can have a special, more intimate visit with them later. She immediately turned back to her magazines. The subject closed. It was just one more confirmation, as if I needed it, that she was still ruthlessly dedicated to editing any trace of my mother out of her picture-perfect narrative, a narrative that was about to expire. Everything's a go on my end, Chloe whispered, as we pretended to study in the library. My cousin is working the AV for the ceremony. He's on the crew the university hired. Her freckles seemed to stand out more when she was keyed up, and right now, she was practically vibrating with nervous energy. Dr. Bennett had also done his part, helping to track down my mother's old colleagues and friends to extend a secret invitation. Aunt Carol had been invaluable, using her old address book and social media savvy to find people Denise had systematically cut out of our lives over the years. It feels like we're organizing a rebellion, Aunt Carol had said, handing me a list with 27 confirmed names. I smiled as I read them. The oncology nurse who cared for my mom in her final days, the piano teacher who came to our house every Tuesday, our old neighbors who moved after Denise, suggested they might prefer a quieter street. How's the final cut coming along? That was our code name for the presentation that would soon play on the big screen. Dr. Bennett had secured redacted medical reports. Aunt Carol had unearthed old home videos, and I had the letters, the diary, and the audio recordings. Woven together, they formed a story that would be impossible to deny, even for a father who had tried so hard to look away. Almost done, I replied, closing my laptop. We just need to lock down the backups. If something happens to the first flash drive, Chloe grinned, holding up 3 identical drives from her pencil case. Always have a plan B, C, and D. The day before graduation arrived with the kind of electric tension that precedes a violent thunderstorm. My white dress hung on the closet door, the cap and gown laid out neatly, all according to Denise's vision. She was in a state of sheer bliss, rushing around the house barking orders into her phone, confirming last-minute details for the party. My dad seemed genuinely proud, more engaged than he had been in years. For a moment, a pang of guilt hit me for what was about to happen. I was in my room when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Found something you need to see before tomorrow. Hospital parking garage in 30. It was Maria, my dad's secretary. Puzzled and a little nervous, I made up an excuse about a forgotten textbook and drove over. She was waiting for me with a large manila envelope, glancing around nervously like a character in a spy movie. I found this when I was archiving your dad's old case files, she explained, handing it to me. He never knew I kept a copy. I just thought, you might need it someday. Inside was an old, clunky flash drive, the kind nobody uses anymore. On it, a handwritten label. For Robert and Julia. Watch if something happens to me. Claudia. My heart stopped. It was my mother's handwriting. She gave this to me 2 weeks before, the day the doctor changed her medication. She said it was just a precaution. Maria's eyes were filled with tears. I never had the courage to watch it. But now, with you graduating, becoming an adult, I felt it was time. I raced home, the drive clutched in my hand, feeling like I finally had the last missing piece of the puzzle. I woke up before my alarm on graduation morning, my heart hammering and my throat dry. My mother's flash drive was now safe in a small velvet box with the 3 other backups. I had spent half the night watching its contents, weeping silently so as not to wake anyone. Seeing my mom there, pale but resolute in her hospital bed, looking directly into the camera as if she could see me 6 years into the future, was like getting a hug I thought I'd never feel again. If you're watching this, then something has gone wrong, she began, her voice weak but clear. I've noticed strange things. My medication. It feels different on some days, especially when Denise offers to help. The most damning part was a hidden audio recording my mother had made. It was Denise on the phone in the hospital hallway. It's just a matter of time now. Robert will need support, and I'll be right there. Yes, the girl too, of course. She's part of the package. No one has any idea. A soft knock came at my door. My dad came in, already in his navy suit, looking younger and lighter than he had in years. It was a painful glimpse of the man he could have been. I'm so proud of you, Jules. Your mother would be... He trailed off, the way he always did. I smiled, taking his hands. Thanks, Dad. I think, in a way, she'll be here today. If only he knew how literally true that was. The Shriver Hall auditorium at Johns Hopkins was packed, the afternoon sun streaming through the grand arched windows, casting colorful patterns across the crowd. I adjusted my black gown and scanned the audience, locating my team. Chloe in the third row, laptop at the ready, Dr. Bennett near the aisle, giving me a subtle nod, Aunt Carol and the other surprise guests seated strategically throughout the hall. And in the front row, Denise was radiant in a hideously expensive turquoise dress, taking selfies and waving at acquaintances as if the day were all about her. The ceremony proceeded in slow motion. Speeches, honors, the Hippocratic Oath. When the dean announced the presentation of diplomas, my heart hammered so hard against my ribs, I was afraid I might actually pass out. And as our class valedictorian, Julia Rodriguez, I walked toward the stage, and every step felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My father was on his feet, unguarded tears streaming down his face, the raw pride in his eyes visible even from a distance. Denise was also standing, but her smile was different, perfectly calibrated for the cameras she knew were flashing, an expression of manufactured maternal pride. As is tradition, our valedictorian will now deliver a brief address. The dean handed me my diploma and gestured toward the central podium, where a microphone waited. I took a steadying breath, adjusted my mortarboard, and walked over with a calmness I did not feel. I placed my notes on the polished wood and, in one fluid, discreet motion, inserted the flash drive into the USB port on the lectern's console. My eyes swept over the audience, meeting each of my co-conspirators' gazes before finally landing on Denise. She smiled back encouragingly, completely oblivious to the reckoning that was about to unfold. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is a day for celebration, and above all, for gratitude. My voice, to my own surprise, came out steady and clear through the auditorium speakers. I want to begin by thanking the person who taught me the most in life, someone who shaped not only who I am, but who I aspire to be. My mother, Claudia. A quiet murmur rippled through the hall. This was not the expected opening. I saw Denise's smile flicker, her eyes darting nervously toward my father. Many of you knew her, but what you may not know is how much she prepared for this day, even when she knew she might not be here to see it. I pressed a small button on the lectern, and the house lights dimmed. In fact, my mother left a gift for all of us, a message that should have been delivered 6 years ago, but was intercepted. Today, finally, her voice will be heard. The massive screen behind me flickered to life, and there she was, my mother, in her hospital bed, thinner than my memories allowed, but with the same fierce determination in her eyes that I now saw in my own reflection. Robert, Julia, if you are seeing this, it means something went wrong. My mother's voice filled the cavernous, silent hall. I saw my father freeze, his expression shifting from pride to utter confusion. Denise shot to her feet, but Dr. Bennett and 2 campus security officers were already strategically positioned, blocking the aisle. The video that would change all of our lives forever had begun. The entire auditorium held its breath as my mother's voice, silenced for 6 long years, echoed from the speakers. With a clarity that was astonishing for someone so ill, she laid out her suspicions about the manipulation of her medication, Denise's calculating behavior, and the evidence she had gathered. The presentation was a devastating montage, her video diary entries alternating with high-resolution scans of medical records, damning emails, and old photos that proved Denise's long-standing obsession with my father. I'm recording this because I am terrified of what will happen to Julia if I am no longer here to protect her. My mother's voice wavered for the first time as the camera zoomed in on her eyes. My eyes. Denise is not who you think she is. She has been tampering with my IV drips when the nurses are out of the room. She keeps telling Robert what a wonderful stepmother she would be, as if my death is already a done deal. The final brutal blow came from the hidden audio recording. It was Denise, speaking on the phone to a friend just 3 days before my mother passed away. It's just a matter of days now. Yes, I'm already making plans to step in. Robert is so vulnerable. He doesn't see a thing. The girl will be a challenge, but kids are resilient, right? A strangled gasp cut through the silence. It was my father. He surged to his feet, his face a twisted mask of horror, disbelief, and incandescent rage. Denise, meanwhile, was ashen, her eyes darting around the auditorium like a cornered animal. Pandemonium erupted. My father took a step toward the stage, then faltered, as if his body had forgotten how to move. Denise began screaming, her voice shrill. It's all lies. She's twisting everything. But her cries were drowned out by the video, which now showed side-by-side comparisons of medical charts and my mother's handwritten notes, detailing altered dosages and the sudden onset of symptoms that perfectly coincided with Denise's helpful visits. Dr. Bennett stepped forward, a single point of calm in the swirling chaos. As the attending physician on this case, I can confirm the authenticity of these records. His professional voice boomed. I always had questions about the rapid nature of Claudia's decline, but, without concrete proof, beside him one of my mother's former nurses stood up, nodding, tears streaming down her face. I noticed discrepancies in the medication logs. When I tried to report it, I was reassigned. I watched it all unfold from the stage, feeling strangely serene. 6 years of silent planning, culminating in 15 minutes of undeniable truth. The police officers who had been discreetly posted at the exits, another of Dr. Bennett's arrangements, began moving toward Denise. She was now alternating between shrieking accusations at me and pleading with my father. He remained frozen, his gaze shifting from the screen to the woman he married, as if seeing her for the very first time. When an officer gently told her she needed to come with them to answer some questions, my father simply turned his back on her, collapsing into an empty seat and burying his head in his hands. I didn't stay to watch Denise be escorted out. I didn't stay for the shocked embraces from professors or the bewildered questions from classmates. With a quiet resolve that surprised even myself, I stepped down from the stage, tucked my diploma into the bag Chloe handed me, and walked toward the side exit where Aunt Carol was waiting with the car running. I glanced back one last time at my father. Across the tumultuous hall, our eyes met. I saw in his a universe of pain, betrayal, and confusion. But underneath it all, a flicker of understanding. He made a slight move, as if to stand, but I just gave him a single final nod and walked out. "Where to now?" Aunt Carol asked as we pulled away from the campus. Her Clinique Happy perfume, the same scent my mom always wore, filled the car like a comforting hug. I took a deep, shuddering breath, feeling a 6-year weight finally lift from my shoulders. "The beach house," I said. "That little blue cottage Denise was so eager to sell." In the back seat, Chloe smiled and squeezed my hand. "Mission accomplished, then?" I shook my head, watching the city blur past my window. It wasn't a mission, it was a promise. 3 days later, sitting on the sun-bleached porch of the beach house, I read the headlines online. Denise was officially under criminal investigation for potential manslaughter, wire fraud, and forgery. The article mentioned that my father had taken an immediate leave of absence from his firm and had already filed for divorce. My phone had been buzzing nonstop with texts from him, a chaotic jumble of angry accusations, confused questions, and most of all, desperate pleas for forgiveness. Maybe one day I would find the words to reply, but for now, with the rhythmic crash of the Atlantic waves in the background, and the salty breeze tangling my hair just as it used to tangle my mother's on our childhood vacations, I finally felt still. It was a profound peace that settled deep in my bones, a quiet I hadn't realized I had been starving for over the last 6 years. "We did it, Mom," I whispered to the endless blue horizon. "No one will ever silence your voice again." And somewhere, maybe in the vastness of that same sky, or maybe just in the finally unburdened space of my own heart, I could have sworn I heard her laughing in reply.